Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is Adrian Chung, who is Director of the Media, Telecom, and Technology Practice at JD Power Canada. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I hope I got the whole title right.
Close enough.
Okay, 2021 Canada Wireless Network Quality Study was just released this week by JD Power. One of the interesting things I noticed in there that's 67% of Canadians think their wireless network is reliable when streaming video and music. So I don't know if that's a low percentage or maybe the wireless networks across Canada should be doing better. What are your thoughts on that percentage, Adrian?
Yeah, Mary, I think you can look at it a couple different ways. I mean, it's 2/3 essentially say it's reliable, which means a third don't agree that that's the case. I would say, we've been seen an unprecedented kind of past 12 to 15 months, right? In terms of the changes that we've seen with people working from home, more devices, more traffic, more frankly for these networks to carry. So I think, from a couple of things we'll talk about, the reliability side of things, there are, high expectations of from consumers, frankly. So I think that that's, part of the role. And, when we talk about streaming in particular, video, audio, um, nearly half of the activity that we see is happening in those types of events. So,
Yeah.
much more so than obviously making a phone call or sending a text. So again, heightens that expectation because, if I have an interruption in any way, shape, or form when I'm watching Netflix now, things like that, it's more apparent, it's more obvious, and that's, where it hits home.
Now, obviously, it hit home this week with Rogers experiencing a lot of problems. Do you think overall, like people are confident in the reliability, I guess, of their wireless networks in general, even for some of the other stuff, like as I said, phone, the text?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like what we saw is it's largely meeting expectations. And it's fair, it's good, it does the job. It's what we've as Canadians, I guess, have come to expect. Some of the other comments we've made, it's not overwhelmingly, the perception hasn't been it's overwhelmingly fast or overwhelmingly reliable, at all times. But I think largely, and again, especially given all the kind of the increase in traffic and challenges there, I think carriers have done a great job in terms of getting ahead of that, right? Being ahead of that in terms of the investment, in terms of making sure that we weren't going to be essentially held back or held down by way of that type of need that there is out there.
So when you looked at, you mentioned a little bit about speed, the survey showed 7%, only 7% think their network speeds are faster than expected. Does that surprise you, such a low number?
Initially it did, but we've now seen that for a couple of years. So, even with the likes of, the introduction of, 5G coming, obviously it's here, but, certainly not mainstream just yet. It seems to take a lot to heighten that level of speed to the point where people are surprised and delighted. Again, it's largely as expected. Now we can stream videos, we can stream music without interruption. That is acceptable. So it takes a lot to go beyond those expectations.
Yeah, Adrian, you mentioned the 5G. Obviously, that's the game changer, so to speak, in the industry here in the near future. The future is now, as an old football coach said. But do you think people are willing to pay more money for 5G to get what 5G will give them?
At this point, what we're seeing is no, that's not the case. It's in the single digits in terms of willingness to spend more, and I think there's affordability challenges today, right? That people are still, as we come out of this pandemic, hopefully, getting back on their feet. So that's not priority. And again, with the expectations being largely met, it's reasonable right now what type of level of service essentially. I think there's still a lot of opportunity. It's earlier days. Again, the carriers, rightly so, need to be ahead of this and putting that in place. But I think there's still a bit of an education gap there in terms of understanding, what it really means for consumers, how they will benefit, and why, essentially they, want to or expect to pay more. Um, Still a gap there.
So Adrian, for consumers, and maybe the consumers who aren't well versed in this area, maybe can you explain like what 5G will do for them? And you mentioned benefits. So what would be the main benefits for a consumer for 5G?
Yeah, I think it is going to be largely built around speed, which again, as we've shown already, it's hard to people are still grappling with that being this a little bit better or significantly better. But I think it's going to be more the application. So I think it steps especially right now, it's a little bit further removed from the consumer because it's enabling. When you think of autonomous vehicles and things like that, it's beyond our day to day
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. So it's going to enable a lot of machine to machine work and again significantly faster speeds. But I think in the kind of more personal device, from a kind of personal device standpoint, there's kind of less to be seen today.
yeah. One of the things, Adrian, the last question I have for you, and I don't know if this study touched upon it or if previous studies that you folks have done have touched upon it, but how do Canadians feel about the consolidation of the industry? Obviously, in the in recent weeks, we had the big news with Rogers buying out Shaw. How do consumers feel about that?
I mean, I think there's it's on the ongoing view of whether there's competition or not. With this type of merger, you get, Rogers, a brand that's not typically performed as well in some of our studies specifically. Shaw, not featured so much in our research, but, bringing two companies like that together, both with long history, I think it's a matter of how that transition is handled. Essentially, at the end of the day, Shaw customers probably have a little bit more to, I don't want to say lose, but I mean, that's an identity and a trust factor essentially that customers out west have had for many years. So I think again, I think net, it's not surprising given the competition is no longer kind of just within the telcos. You're fighting against the streaming companies and other entities as well. So I
Mhm.
think it's not surprising to see something like that happening, but again, it's kind of how the customers come out, and as long as they're put kind of front and center to benefit, and there's a focus there, you could see a positive result.
Okay, super. I lied. I have one more question. Just when you look at that study, the Canada Wireless Network Quality Study, is there anything else you wanted to mention that you felt was important that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, at the end of the day, that study is measuring reliability from what we call problems per 100 metric. So it is a perception-based metric in some ways. We're looking at the most recent interactions that you had. So the last 10, phone calls you made, the last 10 text messages you sent, and so forth. So we're
Yeah.
looking at it from that viewpoint. And I do want to just take a second to call out our winners. I mean, TELUS had the fewest problems reported by their customers in the West. In Ontario, it was Bell and TELUS tied, and then Videotron in the East. And so again, no network was without problems, but those were the key players, and we're seeing that consistency from some of these brands year on year.
Okay, and not to put a plug in, but I'm using TELUS right now to do this interview.
No glitches from my end, so obviously it looks it's coming through pretty good.
All right. Thanks, Adrian, for taking the time to join us today.
I appreciate it.
Okay, that was Adrian Chung, who is Director of the Technology, Media, and Telecom Practice at JD Power Canada. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.